In the name of God, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Amen. Well, let me retell that story, perhaps in slightly more modern words. Once there was a guy who had a ton of money, one of the top 1% of wealthy people. Of course, Jesus didn't say a ton, he said a talent. And a talent was a measure of weight, quite a lot of it. A talent of money is actually the equivalent of 15 years' wages. So this guy's got about $120 million. And you don't suppose that he got it through doing overtime at a second job. He most likely got it from oppressing people, scamming the system, paying the lowest possible wages, oppressing workers, skimping on safety and environmental measures, lobbying for fewer regulations and taking advantage of where money and power allowed him to. Anyway, he lines up with his money managers. To one he gives $75 million, to another $130 million, and to another $15 million. The first two play the game. They invest his money. Probably more likely where the real money is made, in armaments, oil, speculative banking and loan sharking through credit cards. But the third manager won't play along. He joins the Occupy Galilee protest. When the rich guy demands his take, the manager returns his $15 million. And says to him, "Don't you know that people are afraid of you? You steal money that's not yours. Here, take your money and get an honest job. I want nothing to do with you." Well, that's the modern understanding of that parable. And sermons on this parable normally take the form of the landowner being God and sharing out the gifts, and then we have to use our gifts properly. If we don't use our gifts properly for the kingdom, then we'll lose it. And that's the normal way that sermons are preached on this particular text. Now, there is nothing wrong with saying that God gives us gifts and we need to use those gifts to the best of our ability for the good of the kingdom. Nothing wrong with that at all. The trouble is that is not what this text is about. And so you can't really, if you look at the text and understand the text, you can't really preach a sermon on that subject on this particular text. So let's look at the context. In Matthew chapter 24, there's all that apocalyptic stuff. So what Matthew is saying is that we're coming to the end of this story. This is the end of this era. And then in chapter 25, where we are now, we have the story that we had last week, the story of the 10 bridesmaids. And that's a story about being alert, being awake, being ready for the bridegroom to come. And so we're encouraged to open our eyes and to look around and to be aware. And then we have this story of the talents. Again, it's another story about waiting for the return of the person in charge and giving account for our deeds, if you like. And so this part of Matthew, we're looking at the end times, and at this time of the year, coming up to Advent, that's always the themes that are being used. Well, in this particular story, at least the way Matthew tells it, Jesus is being very specific about a story. He is all but naming names. Not quite game to name names, that's always a politically difficult thing. But the people know who he's talking about. If I told you a story about a leader who wore red Speedos, you'd know who I was talking about, wouldn't you? If I told you a story about a leader who had fiery red hair, you would know who I was talking about. Well, people know who Jesus is talking about in this particular story. He is talking about Herod Archelaus. Herod Archelaus was quite a brutal leader at the time. And he left his property in charge of some managers and went off to Rome to be commissioned, if you like, as the king of that area under the auspices of the Emperor of Rome. And when he came back, of course, he did exactly as this story. He called all his managers to account, and apparently there was all sorts of trouble and strife, and it was in the newspapers of the day, and everyone was talking about it. So Jesus tells a story about this unjust, punishing sort of ruler. Now the story unfolds that two of these people collude with the ruler. They invest the money. They keep going what he had been doing, and it returns quite a lot of money. And they come back and they're praised and honoured for their deeds. The third slave, the one with the one talent, the one with the 15 million, not the 75 million. He is, even at the beginning of the story, suspect, because the story says each is given to according to their ability. So this guy isn't seen by Archelaus as having much ability anyway. He's only given a small share of the money. Why is he not seen as having much ability? Well, because he's not very good at playing Archelaus' game. He's not very good at oppressing people and ripping them off. He's not very good at oppressing the poor. He's not very good at sort of wringing the last cent out of a tenant. And so his ability is not seen as being particularly helpful. So he's only given a small amount. And so when he is called to account, he says to the ruler, I knew that you are a harsh man who reaped where he did not sow, who gathered where he did not scatter. So I hid your money. I buried it in a shallow grave. Here it is. I'm not going to play your game. And of course he is sent into the outer darkness. If we read the parable in the way we traditionally read it, the last guy is seen as the bad guy, the guy who didn't use his talent, and someone who is not being able to participate in the kingdom, and he's sent out into the outer darkness. If we read the parable in this way, this guy is the hero. Because Jesus says, the kingdom of heaven is as if. It's as if the world is corrupt. People are oppressing the poor. People are wringing the last cent out of people who can't afford it. People are abusing power. The kingdom of heaven is like this. If you don't join in that game, if you stand up against those people, if you join the Occupy Wall Street protests or whatever, then you will be ostracised. You'll be put out. You'll be persecuted. The kingdom of heaven is like that. If you come and follow me, you're going to be like the third guy. If you do what I do, you are going to be persecuted. The kingdom of heaven is as if. It's the upside down way that we normally understand this parable. But modern scholars are saying this is truly about Herod Archelaus. And if you put it in that context, then the kingdom of heaven is as if. People who stand up for the poor, who stand up for the oppressed, who don't abuse power or money, will be on the outer. And that, in my experience and the experience of millions and millions of Christians throughout the ages, rings true. Now, as I said, Matthew is in that sort of apocalyptic part of the gospel, the end times part of the gospel. He's saying that this story is just about to end. And you know that, you know me well enough to know that I'm not really an apocalyptic sort of person, so I'm not sort of going to get up on a Sunday morning and say the end is near and all that kind of thing. But I'm going to go all apocalyptic on you this morning, because I think that's what the gospel calls us to think about and to do. And at this time of the year, as we approach Advent, these themes are always important to us. When Matthew is writing, the It is the beginning of the end of one of the greatest civilisations that the world has ever known. You can start to see the cracks forming. Julius Caesar died in 44 BC. It was the pinnacle of the Roman Empire. And here we are some 70 or 80 years after that, or 90 years after that actually, and you can start to see the cracks form in the Roman Empire. The Roman Empire ended, officially at least, some sort of 300 odd years after that. But it takes great civilisations a long time to crumble. But all systems, all civilisations eventually must fail. Eventually must fail. Where are the Babylonians? Long gone. The Egyptians are long gone. The Mesopotamians are long gone. All those great civilisations, the Romans, the Greeks, are all gone. What about the great Christian civilisations of the Middle Ages? All gone. What about the Spanish and the Portuguese and the English? All gone. What about the great civilisations of the 20th century? The communists, the fascists, the Third Reich? All gone. All systems must come to an end. So in all ages, we are never far off what we call the end times, at least for a civilization. Are we seeing the crumbling of the Western economic empire? I think we probably are. Eventually, it'll see us out. I don't think we have to worry too much, but it probably won't see our grandchildren and our great-grandchildren out. And so we are in some way seeing the beginning of the end of an empire, just as Jesus was, just as Matthew is trying to alert people to. We have had the global financial crisis, and we thought we'd patched it up. Well, I'm not sure we had. Greece is just about to fail. Italy looks like becoming a failed state. We will patch it up, and we will move on. But I don't think the patches will last forever. The Western economic paradigm, the Western economic system is beginning to fail. And I've spoken before about the shift in paradigms throughout history, the four great paradigms of the tribal paradigm, the religious paradigm, then the political paradigm, and we all know that we are in the economic paradigm. The cracks are starting to show. And there are little boys running around sticking their fingers in dikes all over the place to stop the leakage. But eventually, I think the system will begin to crumble. And so, here we are. Here we are as Matthew was. Perhaps at the beginning of a very slow process towards death and resurrection, because we are Christians. When we see something dying, we need to have faith that something else will rise again. And so often I see Christians who honestly I don't think believe in death and resurrection. They don't allow things to die so that they can rise again. And as I've said before, it seems to me that the next paradigm will probably be the environmental paradigm. Something will rise out of this. Now, through the week we had this thing at Parliament passed called the carbon tax. Now, if you are a good die-to-the-wall Liberal voter, you'll hate it. If you're a good die-to-the-wall Labor voter, you'll hate it. You'll still hate it, but you probably won't be quite as vocal about it. None of us like taxes. None of us like it. We all hate paying more tax and any sort of tax. But in this whole debate that has gone backwards and forwards across Parliament especially in the last week and in the weeks and months running up to this, I've not seen anybody in the debate from either side, so I'm not being party political here, But I've not seen anyone in the debate from either side who truly and deeply understood what they were talking about, or what they were doing. What they were doing was beginning a transition from one system to another, from one paradigm to another. And the only way they could do that was by using the language and the structures of the old system, because we haven't got a new system yet. And so when we look at an environmental issue, we'll seek to address it in an economic way. Of course we will. It's the only way we have to do it. We can't do it any other way. But it is the beginning of a process. Now, like it or not, and none of us like taxes, but we have to, as the gospel calls us, to open our eyes and open our hearts and understand what is going on. St. Paul, in that first reading, writes to people and says, like, you know the sign, you know what's going on, you can see what's going on. You are not in darkness, and we are not in darkness. If we open our eyes, we can see what is going on. If we can see what is going on, we are more equipped to engage it, more equipped to help our politicians form a good policy. We are in a transitional period and have been for some time. Who recycles? Everybody recycles. Everybody's got a yellow bin. Everybody puts their bottles and cans and papers in. We've been doing it for years. That is because for a long time we have been in this transitional period. Who's got all the new fangled light bulbs in their houses now? Everybody? Yes, can't even buy the old ones anymore. They mightn't be quite as bright, but they don't burn as much electricity. And so we're in that period of transition from one dying system, one dying model, into a new one. And eventually that one will probably crumble. But we can't change that. We are in that time. In 10 years or 20 years' time, perhaps, there'll be no such thing as an internal combustion engine in our cars. We'll be all driving some sort of new hybrid-y kind of thing, and we can see that now. Well, car makers are, they keep bringing out sort of new, they're exploring new ways of not burning as much fuel, new ways of being kinder to our environment, because we're in this transitional period. This gospel and this story that Jesus puts before us is a story of end times choice. It puts before his disciples and his followers a choice. Are you going to collude with a crumbling system that as it crumbles will become more corrupt, will have to oppress more of the disadvantaged to survive? Or are you going to throw your lot in with the emerging kingdom? The kingdom of God is as if there were people who were willing to make a choice, take a risk to live on the outside for a time, so that something new, something more just, something more equitable may arise. The question for us, the question for Christians,